Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Centrifuge, and today I want to talk about a little known game called Nobody Wants to Die.
James, no need for bragging. You know what they say, show, don't tell.
This is Critical Hit Games' first outing, but you wouldn't really know it looking at it and playing it because it is pretty well put together. This game presents a story and setting that pays apparent homage to the stylings and stereotypes of LA noir detective tales, particularly ones that rely on heavy brooding and sarcastic narration from a certain disgruntled protagonist to pull its story along.
The city sprawls in every direction. It's only a matter of time before it starts devouring itself.
It unabashedly thrives within these tropes while managing to carve out a pretty distinct identity both within gaming and the subgenre itself that it uses as its driving force, ultimately creating a world that truly feels authentic with its cyberpunk-infused callbacks to the Art Deco era, probably the best looking architecture in my opinion. It's kind of like Blade Runner and BioShock had a baby. It's probably the best way of putting it. It has this classy, sleek elegance of the rich that has been intertwined with the impoverished, rugged slums and neon-soaked streets. But, and there is always a but, not all is swell with this sleuthing adventure, and unfortunately, the longer the game went on for me, the more problems that I took away from it. Nobody Wants to Die finds itself within the walking sim genre, right? So, right off the bat, it is a love it or hate it kind of game because, well, it's a walking sim and a rather simplistic one at that, and I know how some people feel about the walking sim genre. This genre has been able to keep itself afloat with well-written narratives and provocative themes and gameplay that evolves into more than just walking, and I'd say that this game tries to have more going for it, but it doesn't successfully pull it off. There is more to do than simply walking, but the gameplay mechanics it introduces don't have enough depth to really grasp onto. The primary focus of the game is solving cases that become bigger and more dire the deeper you go into the rabbit hole. It's aided with political conspiracy, civil unrest, and the unchecked power of governments. It does a great job of crafting a world in a matter of the 4 to 5-ish hours it took me to beat the game. Now, the case in question is a seemingly inconspicuous murder of an elite political figure in the drab, wet setting of an oppressive, looming future New York. You play as James Kara, a detective that has recently gone through some traumatic events that I won't spoil, but this guy can't seem to catch a break and as such has been forcibly put on paid leave. That is, until he is given what is supposed to be an easy task of recovering some evidence from a crime scene with his new assigned partner, Sarah, an up-and-coming red and blue who has her own motives. Their relationship through the game quickly becomes the heart of the story as they quip and banter throughout its runtime.
Let's try this another way. Does it make you feel something when you smell it? Emotions? James, anything.
You think it's edible?
Glossing right over the emotion talk. Okay.
I personally really enjoyed their relationship and how it evolved and how the player can somewhat shape the outcome. There are a plethora of dialogue options within the game, but most are there for an illusion of choice. However, there are some that will shape the ending, of which there are 4, although I can't see myself going back to get any of the other endings simply because that seems like too much work. These dialogue options a lot of the time just allow you to get to know Sarah and the world better, and those to me are worth doing. I'll just say that Sarah's story for me was one of the highlights of the game, and I think she's more interesting than James. The story managed to plunge into some pretty serious subject matter like the cost of immortality to one's conscience, the more perverse side of humanity, the abuse of certain depressants, and love. The pursuit of immortality isn't just a theoretical discussion point here, like it is in our society. Rather, it is something that humanity has actually been able to conquer. Authoritative people and institutions developed a technology called Icarate, which allows people to transfer their consciousness to another body once the one they inhabit dies, to essentially live forever. However, there is a caveat to this, which of course there is. The world being as cruel as it is saw companies develop a prospering economic empire around in-demand bodies with the introduction of a subscription-like service that is all too prevalent in our society today. Everything seems to be a subscription service. Residents are forced into this service at the age of 21, even for the body that they are born into, meaning that there is absolutely no personal autonomy at all here. If they don't pay for it, their body is revoked, and I won't spoil what happens to it, but it's pretty twisted. These very themes all have their place within the story that made it more engaging and is probably one of the main reasons I kept going. I say that because the story started falling apart for me in the last hour or so. I really thought they had something spectacular going for it until the final reveal, which felt like a big cliche. With how cool the lore is, I guess I was just expecting something not as obvious. But I will give credit where it's due. The first half of the game had me hooked and the mystery was genuine. I had my suspicions, of course, but it all felt purposefully misleading. The voice acting is a strong element too. Both James and Sarah have AAA style voice acting that gets a plethora of emotions across. Good thing too, because in a game like this, it really counts. So the gameplay. Well, to start this off, I should tell you that the game ran great. I didn't have any crashes or stutters the entire time. I didn't have any graphical pop-in, and the presentation is awesome. But the gameplay was a miss for me. It's an investigative story, right? So when you think of a game like this, it should probably look something like entering a crime scene and uncovering all of the evidence with various tools fueled by the sheer power of our brains. However, this game does not do that. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that because there are 3 sections in the game where it makes you piece together clues in the typical cliche fashion of scattering evidence on the floor. These moments take place after the reconstruction event of the crime scenes, but again, they are kind of rudimentary. The real meat and potatoes should come from actually solving a crime scene. The game gives you 3 tools that all look inventive and appropriate, a reconstructor tool that does exactly what it sounds like, a UV light that traces all those yucky bodily fluids, and the camera. The problem is there are seldom occasions where the game lets go of your hand to figure something out on your own. It's like it doesn't trust you. It frequently even points you in the direction that it wants you to go to so you can't miss it. Now I know my own mental faculties, okay? I gotta be honest with myself. This game gave me very little moments of downtime for me to be able to piece something together, and I know this is true because I would have had plenty of moments of feeling like a complete jackass not knowing what to do while I stood in place for 10 minutes to try to figure something out. The crime scenes are all elaborately crafted, and slowly piecing them together in an effort to watch it all unfold in front of you is impressively cool, but there just isn't much freedom that comes from doing it. But when you aren't doing that, there are many in-between moments with an emphasis on picturesque scenery and dialogue that really blew me away. Sitting on a neon sign in the heart of Brooklyn, soaking in the atmosphere while basking in the red glow of the neon light with narration just really hits hard and made me want more. But something within the gameplay that really irked me was the incessant amount of times the game plays out similar animations nearing its end, just it seems to try to draw it out a little bit longer. During the last reconstruction event, James is going through, shall we say, some pretty serious things, and he falls over several times, and each time you have to watch the same animation play out, and it just gets so tiresome. There are moments when the game slows you to a crawl for cinematic flair and then tasks you with walking a certain distance, and I just dislike when games do this. I touched on the world a little bit already, but it is what makes this game something that I will remember going forward. The grungy, mechanical, heavily industrialized dystopian exteriors are complemented nicely by the sophisticated, rich interiors of an elite that is so out of touch with the rest of the world because they live on a different plane of existence. Something that is symbolically proven by the main victim's penthouse that rests above the clouds with no view of the city in sight. I mean, hell, the way the game opens is enough to captivate anybody. What at first glance looks like a routine driving experience is thrown through a loop when James swings the door open to gaze upon the city from an elevated perspective. Just what a hell of a way to establish the world as a character of its own. There are more subtle instances of world building too, like James's bathroom being a shared space with other residents in his apartment building, meaning that if someone beat him to it, he can't use it. But also his fridge or food dispenser, whatever you want to call it, this seems to be oozing some honey-like goo that just looks disgusting. The developers clearly knew and were extremely confident in their technical achievements because the game often presents scenes with the intent of showcasing their graphical superiority. Take this for instance, right? James is laying down looking up at the city, pondering his thoughts, only for a car to abruptly come over him and distract him from his thoughts, prompting him to sit up and for the player to realize that he's actually laying on the hood of his car and is now overlooking the bustling city below, where you can actually see people moving around. It's something else. I could stare at this all day. If anything, this game really made me realize that we need more games with a style like this one. Dystopian cities with a sharp aesthetic are a crutch for me, no matter the lack of gameplay. As for the music, It's amazing. I am no musical expert. I don't even listen to many genres of music, but it sounds like a sturdy mix of classical, jazz, and blues. There are lots of somber tracks, but also some upbeat ones that almost made me want to get up and start dancing, and I do not dance. The first track during the initial crime scene made me feel like a 50s cop with an inquisitive nature. And I've been humming the title theme ever since I started playing it, so yeah. That tells you everything you need to know. There are some really great things that I took away from my time with it, but it's the conclusion. So, what are the overall thoughts on this game? Well, is the game bad? No, by no means is it a bad game, but was it a little disappointing? Yeah. The writing is compelling, the voice acting great, the game's first half had all the right intrigue, exploring the tightly crafted, dense environments elicited pure joy in my soul, but it just didn't nail a lot of the other aspects. This game is also like $35 Canadian new. That's a hard price to contend with, especially for a new game that looks and runs this good. I most certainly got $35 worth of fun out of it. The missteps are disappointing for sure, but critically hit games, just please invent on your gameplay formula and give us more of this world because I want it. I'm here for it. And that is going to wrap up my review for Nobody Wants to Die. If you like the content, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you played the game, let me know in the comments below. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And also, do you plan to pick it up? I want to know all that in the comments below. So thanks for watching. Good night and good lunch.